Hello, my name is James Bourne, and alongside me here today is Scott Littman, co-founder of AI-powered enterprise answer engine Lucy. We're here today to talk broadly about GPT and generative AI technology, which right now, we're recording this in March 2023 for reference, is absolutely huge. Certainly, there's been the explosion in public consciousness, thanks predominantly to releases from OpenAI, and also huge media coverage. What does ChatGPT mean for this industry or that industry? Is generative AI ready for the enterprise? And so on and so forth. All of these are important questions, of course, and we will sort of dig down into this to a degree, but also we're going to be looking at what the right strategy is for you if you're an organization looking to incorporate this technology to a degree. So with that in mind, Scott, great to have you here. Would you like to introduce yourself and just give a little bit of your career to date and essentially how Lucy has come into being?
Absolutely. So thank you for having us on. Scott Littman, co-founder of Lucy. As far as my personal background, I'm a 5-time entrepreneur. I've spent my entire adult life as an entrepreneur in technology and technology services for the enterprise, working with large Fortune 500s. Along the way, I've built Inc. 500 companies. I've been an E&Y Entrepreneur of the Year. The businesses that have built previously have all had high growth and success. And it was about 6 years ago that we founded Lucy. We had just sold a Salesforce consultancy to Mindtree out of India. My partners and I came up with the idea of really wanting to explore how AI was going to affect the world of marketing and communications. And we formed the early concepts of Lucy, and about 2 years in, we really focused entirely on how AI would affect the world of knowledge management in large enterprises.
Okay, great. So I guess with that in mind, we're talking about GPT, generative AI. I get from your side, Scott, give us a potted history, if you like, on the evolution of this technology, where it's come from, where we are right now, why the massive hype in recent months, and I guess not just talking about innovation itself here, but particularly the pace of innovation with regard to this technology.
Yeah, so I'll start with the pace. And I always think as a tech entrepreneur that I'm used to living in dog years. Like things move fast. We're not on an annual cycle like a retailer that's like, okay, we're getting ready for holiday season. We're getting ready for Valentine's season. It's my entire life has been in the fast lane as far as the pace and evolution of the technology. But when OpenAI made their announcements in December, I feel like we went from dog years to hamster years. The pace since then has become faster than anything I've ever seen. And, as a matter of perspective, I mean, we've been partnered with OpenAI for 2 years. We have the GPT of ChatGPT baked into our software, and we've been delivering generative responses to customers for some of them over a year. And we will soon have the chat of ChatGPT into our solution as well. But all that said, as much as we've been on the front lines of it, as an AI company partnering with OpenAI as a component within our solutions, we were as blown away by what we experienced in December as everyone else. And I was thinking about this, in November, I was watching a movie, I think it was Wakanda Forever with my son, and watching, it was Princess Shuri's having a conversation with an AI. And if I think about it, for my entire life, we've seen movies and shows, whether it was, all the way back to 2001 Space Odyssey and, the conversations with Hal. Movies have had interactive conversations with an AI, but that's been science fiction. But in December, what was science fiction in November became the reality of our lives. And really, we're still in the primordial ooze of what does this mean? People will complain, we'll talk about the accuracy side of things, but there's a lot of hype around how amazing the technology is, and it's quite amazing. There's also a lot of hype about inaccuracies and concerns and issues there. But we're effectively dealing with, as much as this is the most advanced thing we've seen, we're still dealing with a toddler from this point forward, because this is the beginning. Just imagine where we'll be 18 months from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, with the pace of evolution we're already seeing from all of this. So the pace is lightning fast, and and what we've witnessed and what we're experiencing is pretty incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And so to, I guess, clarify what you said there, it feels like that the conception is that while this has been a revolution for end users, particularly with, the explosive impact, it's been perhaps more of an evolution for those working in the industry, although you said yourself that you were surprised by the impact as well. Just maybe a little bit more on that.
Actually, let me clarify something on that. The generative AI side, we have been seeing evolve and getting more and more impressed with different iterations, and we've been playing with for a long time. I think the thing that blew us away and that has caused all the hype is the chat side of it, the interactivity, the ability to ask a question and say, my elbow hurt, I was playing tennis, and get a response, and then say, but I was using a topspin serve. And all of a sudden, like, how does that, it's like in remembering what that past conversation was. And the conversations I've had with my AI in ChatGPT, is wide ranging. And it's incredible, the range and diversity and the number of steps in the conversations. And I think so it's the chat side of it that has been so revolutionary versus the generative side is super cool. We were ready for that. We are in that. But the back and forth is what has been so dynamic.
Yeah, so and I was going to say, I guess that in terms of it wasn't what it could do, but the impact of it and the future side of it and the repercussions of it, I guess, was that sort of the question mark beforehand that essentially blew you away.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's bring in Lucy here, I guess, having sort of set the scene. I mean, first of all, Scott, for those who may be coming to Lucy a bit fresh, let's start with the elevator pitch, if you like, about, who she is, what she does, and why. And then from that, as you mentioned a little bit as well, moving to the journey towards the generative side with Lucy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Lucy is an answer engine for enterprise knowledge. And what that really means is it's Lucy's job to provide the right answer to the right person at the right time. And the way we do that is we connect, we have a series of connectors that work with the major enterprise systems. So whether somebody's on, Microsoft with SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive for Business, Office 365, Azure Cloud, whether they have Salesforce, ServiceNow, SAP, Notion, Box, Ignite, all the things that are where enterprise data lives in typical large companies. And so we have all these connectors, and we're really fantastic with unstructured data. Everything that's Word, PowerPoint, PDF, OneNote, Visio, text, infographics, audio, video, all of the content that lives in those systems that was never really meant to be searched. And as an answer engine, we find answers down to the page level and or pages, the different, it's page 6 of this PowerPoint, it's page 32 of this Word document, here on page 133 and 148 of this PDF, here are where your answers are. And what we really replace is, in large companies, we've done studies, the way that people search for knowledge is one of two ways. They search a system like SharePoint, typically by keyword or file name. They generally get a giant list of documents. And if what you're looking for is on page 12 of the 13th document in a set of 100 documents, you're probably never going to get it. So then people go to messaging platforms, Teams, Slack, WebEx Teams, Google Chat, and they start messaging around the enterprise, saying, at James, at Scott, and they have the list go on. And they use tribal knowledge. And by the way, that works sometimes very well. But sometimes it doesn't. And you don't really know. You don't know, is the person that could best answer it, were they in the thread? If they were in the thread, were they busy, and did they think, it's for somebody else? If you're the subject matter expert always answering stuff, it's super disruptive. And, we've interviewed people and the SMEs will say, I just want to stop all the bad questions. Like, I've answered this question 1,000 times in my life. I don't want to answer it again. And so both of these things, searching large corporate file systems, or even knowing which system to search, which is another issue, or the tribal knowledge of trying to use Teams or Slack or messaging platforms, they're both really inefficient. And as an answer engine for enterprise knowledge, Lucy's job is to solve that. Ask her a question as you would to a colleague. She will search all the systems that she's been given permission for and connected to, and bring back answers from data that already exists in a company.
Okay, great. Because there are different terms that are sort of thrown around here. You obviously used the term answer engine at the beginning of that answer. There's also, enterprise search and others as well. But I guess, just clarify, particularly with, what we're talking about, the generative, the chat side that's coming through, the difference, I guess, between, say, a chatbot, an answer engine, and enterprise search at this
Yep.
stage, and the sort of the pros and cons and weighing all that up.
Absolutely. So the easy one is the difference between answer engine and chatbot. Chatbots are really cool, but they require skills to be developed. And the skills are focused on what are the common questions that a business is going to ask. So, if it's a call center, if it's sales ops, if it's HR support, you're going to say, well, what are the kinds of questions people ask? And then you will program the chatbot. You'll develop its skills. And the cool thing is the skills can go multiple layers deep, a little bit like ChatGPT does, where you can ask a question and get prompted with, well, are you, what are my benefits? Well, are you in US or Europe? I'm in Europe, which country? You'll develop the skills. The challenge with chatbots is you have to basically predict what people are going to ask in advance and then build out the skills. And then you have to maintain the skills. The difference with an answer engine is we're connected to all of the data. In the case of that HR question, we're going to be connected to all of the data in HR. And when somebody asks a question, they can ask anything. We don't have to plan for it in advance. And so long as there's content available, we're going to be able to provide a response. So while the chatbots can go deeper, they require a level of setup and maintenance and really planning in advance for even what skills to develop that are not required of the answer engine. Different than enterprise search, we actually have many of the same underpinnings. For Lucy to be an answer engine like enterprise search, she has to have federated search. She has to have an ability to rank and prioritize content from many sources. She has to have the ability to figure out user controls of who gets to see which information. She needs to have end-to-end encryption and enterprise security to be able to manage all of that. But different than an answer engine, the current breed of Coveo, Cinequas, Mindbreezes, and all of that are enterprise search, they generally provide list of documents. They generally are operating more keyword-ish versus complete natural language search. And for us, we don't just find the list of documents. We go down and say, but the answer is on page 12, and it's on page 14, and it's also from this source and that source, and we rank those things. And so that ends up being very powerful. So we kind of live between the world of enterprise search and chatbots. I think we're going to probably see a bit of convergence as anybody and everybody starts to adopt GPT and then ChatGPT. But that's where we've seen the distinction between those different categories.
Okay, great. And so now let's, I guess, move things on to those kind of strategies for the adoption side of things. And I guess I want to talk a bit about certainties versus uncertainties in the evolution of tech. And I'm really interested in your insight on this one, Scott, as a multiple entrepreneur and observer of tech spending and innovation trends. I mean, I saw a recent story in The Atlantic which looked at the upcoming GPT-4 language model. And there was a sentence which really resonated with me, and it said, as a rule, hyping something that doesn't yet exist is a lot easier than hyping something that does.
Yes.
Yes, because I mean, tech has always been very cyclical, right? So, moving between centralized and decentralized computing is a good example. Right now, we're moving from cloud to edge, for instance. I mean, the reason I say this is a lot of companies will be potentially looking to build GPT technology into their products in multiple use cases, customer service, search. And this is the question of how can, generative AI impact this industry, for instance, But I guess tech being cyclical, build versus buy has been a long-standing argument. Fashion sometimes dictates what side you fall on. So I guess my question, sort of summing all of that up, is this kind of coming back into fashion here when we're looking at something like this GPT side, and really moving on to what side should we kind of fall on?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we first got started about 5-6 years ago, we had a lot of build versus buy discussions. There were, we'd say, look, we're in this, we're creating this answer engine, and we were early stage, but we had this vision of where we were going. And so early customers we talked to said, well, you've got, your first generation, second generation, but, we can go to Elastic and we can license this stuff and we can go build our own. And for about a year, we ended up with a lot of build versus buy discussions just on enterprise search. And what we ended up finding is, I mean, certainly there are plenty of companies that have built their own, but it's not a trivial undertaking. It requires significant people resources. It's not just an API for a particular tech. It's the security models. It is the different document types. It's the different classifiers and ranking of answers. And it doesn't sit still. You build it. If you build it, you have to maintain it. And so we had a lot of discussions, and people ended up coming back to, you know what, I don't need to have a team of 4 devs working full time on this for a year to build this and 2 devs that maintain it ongoing. This isn't core to our purpose. We have better uses of resources. And people would come back and say, but I can buy a package solution for the cost of a dev for a year. This is insane for me to try building it. And so that discussion kind of went away. But in January, all of a sudden, build versus buy came back. And, you know, you made a comment of it's, you know, about competing with the future. There was a lot of FUD, and there still is in the marketplace, you know, fear, uncertainty, doubt. There's a lot of, well, what's Microsoft going to announce next? What's OpenAI going to announce next? Is there just some API that I can set up and, you know, all of a sudden I have enterprise, you know, search or an answer engine? And so these build versus buy discussions are coming back, but it's the same thing where, you know, really ChatGPT is amazing, but as it relates to enterprise knowledge management, it is simply a feature. But the feature doesn't do anything without a federated search, without enterprise connectors to different sources, without connectors to interpreters for the different data types, without user management and controls, without a ranking system of how content's going to come together. And so all the things that we do that are inherent to make Lucy as an answer engine are prerequisites to get to what you can do with generative responses, or as you get to the chat side of it, ChatGPT. So we see a lot of businesses that are in those build versus buy discussions. There definitely is a lot of pressure with executives coming down to IT leadership saying, you know, what are you guys doing with ChatGPT? As if they expect something should be built tomorrow because, you know, they've seen it in the news so much for the last 90 days. And if I'm in IT, I'm sure excited to play with the shiny new toy. And they should. In fact, they'll learn more by playing with it that allows them to then determine, you know, what should they look for in a packaged solution. But it's one thing to play with the shiny new objects. It's another thing to build out a full solution and then maintain it for the rest of time. And the benefit of the packaged solution is we are on the forefront. You know, we've been working with this stuff for years, and we are constantly evolving. We've got a huge team that is always growing and iterating based on the tens of thousands of users providing feedback to us in the real world from a variety of companies. And if somebody is in the build versus buy, they're always going to be in the chasing what already was built, and they'll never catch up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, you know, it differs obviously by industry, and it also differs by use case as well. And you mentioned a little bit in that previous answer, but if I were to ask, you know, what would be, if someone were to build, what would the most likely, you know, because a lot of these projects, some projects will succeed, a lot of them will probably fail. What would be the likeliest cause of failure? Bearing in mind industries are different and use cases are different. But what is that down to in your opinion?
Well, I think that actually I'm going to go to both sides, but what's the biggest risk of failure, but also where would build make most sense? And I'll start with where it makes the most sense, actually, which is if I have a single repository that already there is tech where, you know, I have the simplicity of it's all Microsoft stack and it's all Microsoft documents and it's, you know, and it's as out of the box as possible, you know, in a Microsoft vertical silo. You know, that's where, you know, that's where it might make sense. You know, my only source is SharePoint. The more though, you get into the diversification of data types, it's audio, it's video, it's wikis, it's text, it's infographics, it's PowerPoint, PDF, Word. It lives in various Microsoft tech, not just SharePoint. It lives in ServiceNow, it lives in Salesforce, it lives in the more complex you get, the more there's layers of who has access to what, the more you get away from simple solutions from a single provider, and you need to have all of the different complexities that relate to why companies have products in enterprise search or answer engine or chatbot. And I think the underestimation is, how many resources do I need? How much time am I going to put towards just the build? How much am I going to put towards ongoing maintenance and support? The AI processing is not inexpensive. What's the infrastructure? Because it's not even a matter of, okay, can I afford to have 3 devs full-time for the next year in this, and 1 or 2 for maintenance? I've got to stand up an infrastructure, and the infrastructure cost of processing AI is not trivial either. So there's a lot of things that go into all of it, where it's awfully exciting to see, oh, I can get this API and I can experiment with a set of data and learn and do really cool things in a POC, is very different than I'm going to build a production system for end users, either internal or external, and maintain that infrastructure and the people side of it ongoing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that kind of moves into the sweet spot for a company like Lucy as well, because you mentioned it there, like a lot of companies, their tech stacks are multiple different bits of software, multiple collaboration software, and all of this different sort of data repositories, that the likelihood is that you're not going to be able to build it and then keep up to date with all of that, and the sprawl, I guess, the infrastructure and software sprawl.
Yeah, last week, in a span of 2 days, on Thursday and Friday, I had 3 interactions, one from a top auto company, one from a giant packaged goods company, one from a tech company. And in each case, they said, the boss came down and said, what are we doing with ChatGPT? And they said, we're working with Lucy. They've been partnering with OpenAI for years. They're going to help us commercialize GPT in our enterprise. And I'm like, that is the place for us, because it's not even just the IP and the patents and the tech we've built. It's the team, the know-how for everything from what are the use cases to deploy this for, how to roll it out, how to support it, and then how are we going to evolve it and continue to make sure the best stuff is available in our platform as this technology is evolving in hamster years. And it also means that IT can then focus on, I don't know an IT department that doesn't have an overwhelming amount of demands on them. And it allows them to focus on the demands that are core to the business versus those that are, in a very specific niche, which in this case is enterprise knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've almost precipitated my next question, really, Scott, because I was going to ask you, I guess, take away, looking at it from a sort of not vendor client perspective, but almost from a partnership perspective, if you go for the buy option, outside of the actual tech side of things, you've mentioned this a little bit as well, the client relationship, kind of softer skills to the relationship that will help clients essentially navigate what are uncharted waters, really. So maybe just give me a little bit more of an idea of that, on say what will and won't work, kind of managing expectations, because perhaps one of the good points of build is potentially the idea of these wider possibilities of this technology that maybe the vendor will sort of dampen down a little bit, rolling out, managing products as well, the organizational side. So give me more of an idea of those little flavors as well.
A few things I think about on this is with the pace of change being so incredibly fast, we have to evolve and grow on the business purpose for the technology, the customer service and support side of it, the dev side of it, the product, the leadership, and all of it is happening at an overwhelming pace. The way that we So the way that we think about all this is something that we are pushing ourselves every day. Our customers are pushing us every day. The external world, the pace what's happening, is pushing us every day. I can't imagine if I'm, one IT manager with a couple of, resources. How am I going to keep up with that when I've got everything else that I've got to do to keep the lights on in the business and to support all the systems I've got to support? So I guess that's something I just think about. It's exciting new tech. Everybody wants to play with it, but it also, there's just layers to the challenge.
Yeah, and I suppose one other thing that needs to be looked at as well is, again, you mentioned this a little bit earlier on, but there's a lot that's being written about, what I call the AI wars, big tech making moves, trying to improve their products, building teams as well. But obviously the likes of Microsoft and Google are also going to be looking out for number one to a degree. So for customers with multi-vendor ecosystems and they're uniting all of their systems and tools, is there something missing here? That's something that needs to be thought about?
Yeah, well, so one of the things I think that's really big is that Microsoft has made a huge play in OpenAI, $10 billion, and they are going to infuse generative into everything. And in fact, we're going to see announcements in 2 days with more things that they're going to be putting generative AI into. It's really cool stuff. But they're doing it for the benefit of all things Microsoft. And it is good for Microsoft. They should do it. Customers are going to benefit significantly. But they're not doing it for a broader ecosystem. They're doing it for Microsoft. ServiceNow has not yet made their announcements, but they will. And it's going to be all about how to make ServiceNow better through this. Meta just came out with, a week ago, their announcements about how all of their products are going to have ChatGPT in them or generative AI. There are ways that maybe that will be concerning, but it's in everything. Salesforce made their announcements a week ago. Everybody is going to be making their announcements, but it's all going to be about how it affects their tech stack. And so the challenge is, how do you manage when all this stuff has to interoperate? Saw some recent stats that about 25% of all enterprise data is in Microsoft, but that means that 75% of it is in anything and everything else, from SAP to Salesforce to ServiceNow to Google to wherever else data lives. And so it's a huge reason that it supports that whole build versus buy discussion. That stuff is oftentimes in multiple systems. It also supports the need for various products like Lucy that provide that federated search element across all of it.
Absolutely. So I guess that the final question, Scott, is distilling everything that we've spoken about, really. So you've spoken about the various announcements things companies are going to make, the confusion, perhaps the pressure from higher ups in the organization. If we can sort of distill all that into what your advice would be to those who are right now looking at the potential of this sort of technology and how best to implement it, what would it be and why?
Yeah, well, I mean, as much as it's the shiny object, and there's going to be a lot of excitement to want to play with it and dabble with it, which people should. Like any technology, it comes down to the use case. What is the business purpose that we're out to solve? Is there going to be some form of competitive advantage we can get? Is there some sort of efficiency that we can derive? Is there a way that we can grow our market, our business? Is there something that we can do with it? One of the things that we support our prospects with is we typically go through and do persona modeling exercises, and we try to understand, okay, for this group that you're considering bringing on this technology, what are their business needs? What are their pain points with data? Where does the data live? And if we were to do something, what's going to drive critical success factors or ROI? One of the questions I like to ask is, if we go do this a year from now, we look back, how will we have judged this as being successful? What will we have accomplished? And for any business, they can only take on so many tech initiatives at once, no matter how magical they are. And it's not even just a matter of budget, it's internal resourcing, it's rollout training, getting user adoption, all of that. Now, I think that enterprise knowledge, getting information to the right hands of the right people, supports a variety of use cases that are very high priority. But before somebody spends $1 on it, they've got to figure out, why are they doing it? What benefit will they derive? Is it, is the juice worth the squeeze at the end of the day?
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll tell you what, that was all the questions that was in the was in what I put down. Is there anything here that you want to add in that you think we may have missed in this conversation that we can maybe sort of edit in at some point? I mean, is there anything obvious that we haven't discussed here?
No, I think you've covered it really well. We're excited for this new frontier. We're excited to help guide prospects that are about to engage in this journey with this. And we're really excited to work with our customers. It's been really fun to have customers that have been with us for years that come on and say, I've got to figure out what I'm doing with this, Chat GPT. And we get to say, you're covered. Don't worry. we've been partnering with OpenAI for a long time. This is what we do next. And they're like, there's that sigh of relief and, hey, we're in good hands. So thank you for the discussion. Appreciate all the questions, and looking forward to, working with some members of your audience on their journey as they figure out how to bring ChatGPT into their enterprise.